The blue-green planet of Viridia glowed in the darkness of space as the human transport ship approached the orbital docking station. Inside the ship, Major Alan Bennett looked out the viewport at what would be his home for the next 6 months. The Galactic Coalition Military Academy stood out on the planet's surface, a massive structure of gleaming metal and crystal, visible even from orbit. "First time seeing Viridia?" Lieutenant Samantha Wright asked, joining him at the viewport. Alan nodded. "Hard to believe they've never had a planetary war, not one." "Different evolution, different path," Samantha said, checking her uniform one last time. "That's why we're here, right? Cultural exchange." The transport docked with a gentle thud. Alan gathered his bags and led the small team of 5 human military advisors toward the exit. They had been selected as the first humans to teach at the prestigious academy. The Coalition had invited Earth to join just 3 years ago, and humans were still seen as newcomers by most alien species. The welcoming committee waited beyond the airlock. Academy Commandant Zextrel stood front and center, his tall, slender frame and pale blue skin marking him as a pure-blood Viridian. Behind him stood representatives from the Academy staff, a diverse group of beings from across the Coalition's 12-member species. "Welcome to Viridia," the Commandant said with a stiff bow. His translator pin converted his high-pitched tones into smooth English. "We trust your journey was comfortable." "Very much so, thank you," Alan replied with a proper military salute, which the Commandant regarded with curious eyes. The formal introductions continued as they walked through the station toward the surface shuttle. Alan noticed how the alien staff kept a careful distance from the humans, their body language showing clear discomfort. "The cadets are eager to learn about Earth military history," said Professor Kelnara, a reptilian draconian with emerald scales. "Though I must confess some of us were concerned about including humans in our teaching program so soon after your planet's admission to the Coalition." "Concerned?" Samantha asked. The Commandant cleared his throat. "Earth has a unique history. Among Coalition worlds, your species has experienced continuous warfare throughout its development. Some feel this makes humans unsuitable as instructors for impressionable cadets." Alan kept his expression neutral despite the insult. "With respect, Commandant, that's exactly why we're valuable. The Coalition has enjoyed peace for centuries, but the universe is larger than your 12 worlds. If you encounter species who haven't evolved past conflict, you'll need to understand how they think." They boarded the shuttle, which descended through the atmosphere toward the academy. The massive building sprawled across the landscape, surrounded by training grounds and flight pads. Thousands of cadets from different species trained there, preparing for careers in the Coalition's peacekeeping forces. "The cadets you'll be working with are in their final year," the Commandant explained. "They have already completed their theoretical training in strategy and tactics." "Theoretical?" Samantha asked. "You mean they've never participated in actual combat exercises?" Professor Kelnara looked shocked. "Of course not. We use simulators and historical reenactments. Actual combat would be dangerous." Alan and Samantha exchanged glances. This assignment would be more challenging than they had expected. The shuttle landed on the academy grounds. As they disembarked, a group of senior cadets stood at attention, their varied anatomies making the formation look uneven to human eyes. They represented the best young minds from across the Coalition worlds. "These are the cadets selected for your special seminar," the Commandant said. 100 of our finest. They will be the next generation of Coalition military leaders." Alan looked at their eager, innocent faces. None of them had ever seen real war. None had faced true danger or made life or death decisions. They knew strategy is a game, tactics is theory. That was about to change. The meeting room fell silent as Major Alan Bennett finished his proposal. Around the oval table, the alien faculty members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Commandant Zexitral's pale blue face had darkened to a deep indigo, a sign of distress among Viridians. "This is absolutely unacceptable," Professor Kelnara said, her scaled hand slamming onto the table. "You want to show our cadets actual footage of Earth wars? Real people dying, real destruction?" Alan stood his ground. Yes, that's exactly what I'm proposing. Lieutenant Samantha Wright nodded in agreement. The cadets need to understand what real conflict looks like. Your simulations and theories don't prepare them for the reality. Our teaching methods have served us for centuries, said Dean Lorizan, an elderly Phylaxian whose 6 eyes all blinked rapidly in agitation. Coalition forces maintain peace across 12 systems. What could we possibly gain from exposing young minds to such barbarism? Alan took a deep breath. The humans had been on Viridia for 3 days, and every conversation with the Academy, leadership had gone this way. The aliens simply could not understand why showing real war footage mattered. With respect, Alan said, your cadets have never seen actual combat. If they ever face a species that engages in warfare, they won't. Be prepared for the psychological impact. They need to understand what they're training to prevent. Samantha added, Earth was invited to join the coalition because of our military experience. Let us share that experience. Commandant Zexastral's color slowly returned to normal. What specific materials would you want to show? Selected footage from our major conflicts: World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East campaigns, Ukraine. We'll provide context and analysis. Professor Kelnara shook her head. This goes against everything we teach. War should remain abstract, theoretical. Once you make it real, you normalize it. With respect, Professor, Samantha said, keeping it abstract makes it seem like a game. Real war isn't a game. The debate continued for hours. The human advisors refused to back down, and eventually, the Academy leadership reluctantly agreed to a compromise. The war footage would be shown, but attendance would be optional for cadets of species known to be particularly sensitive to violence. As they left the meeting, Alan felt Samantha's hand on his arm. That was rough, she said. They don't get it, Alan replied. They think they're protecting their cadets, but they're setting them up for failure. The next morning, Alan and Samantha prepared the lecture hall. They had decided to start with footage from World War II, distant enough to feel historical, but with enough visual documentation to show the reality of large-scale warfare. Do you think any of them will even show up? Samantha asked as she set up the viewing screen. Alan shrugged. Hard to say. I think curiosity will win out for most. He was right. When the doors opened, cadets flooded in. All 100 of the selected senior class had come, despite the warnings. They settled into their seats, their alien anatomies making some adjustments necessary. A tall, mantis-like Zerdan had to stand at the back. A group of amphibious aquari needed to periodically spray themselves with water. Once everyone was seated, Alan stepped to the front of the room. Today we begin your real education in military affairs, he said. What you're about to see isn't a simulation. It isn't a reenactment. These are real humans, in real combat, making real decisions with lives at stake. He nodded to Samantha, who dimmed the lights. This footage shows the Allied landing at Normandy, June 6, 1944. What you'll see was recorded by actual combat photographers who landed with the troops. The screen lit up with black and white footage, boats approaching a beach, explosions in the water, soldiers falling as they exited the landing craft. A gasp went up from the cadets. Alan watched their faces closely. Some showed shock. Others, fascination. A few looked ill. None of them had ever seen anything like this before. The footage of soldiers falling on Normandy Beach continued to play. As the minutes passed, more and more cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The amphibious aquari had turned a sickly gray color. The insectoid Zerdon at the back was making a high-pitched clicking sound that his translator couldn't convert. Major Alan Bennett watched their reactions carefully. This was exactly what he had expected: shock, disbelief, and the beginning of understanding. Beside him, Lieutenant Samantha Wright took notes on a small tablet. On screen, medics now dragged wounded soldiers behind limited cover. The camera shook as explosions landed nearby. Blood appeared dark against the sand. A female cadet near the front suddenly stood up. She belonged to the Lintari species, delicate with translucent skin that now glowed with bright spots of distress. Without a word, she hurried from the room. 3 others followed her within minutes. Alan let them go without comment. When the 30-minute segment ended, he signaled to Samantha to turn on the lights. The room remained absolutely silent. Many cadets seemed frozen in their seats. What you just saw, Alan said quietly, was one beach on one day in a war that lasted 6 years and covered half our planet. A tentative hand rose. A male Viridian cadet whose blue skin had paled considerably. Were those actual deaths we witnessed? He asked, his voice barely audible. Yes, Alan answered. Those men died moments after the cameras recorded them. Another cadet, a stocky Borellian with thick skin plates, spoke without raising his hand. But why would they continue forward? The logical action would be retreat when facing such immediate danger. Samantha stepped forward. They couldn't retreat. They had to take the beach to establish a foothold in occupied territory, and if they tried to turn back, they would likely die anyway. The room erupted with questions. How could humans create weapons to use against their own species? Did the combat photographers survive? Was this considered a successful operation despite the casualties? Alan and Samantha answered each question directly and honestly. As the session came to its scheduled end, Alan noticed that most cadets seemed reluctant to leave. They huddled in small groups discussing what they had seen. One cadet approached the front, a tall, graceful female with silver skin that reflected the room's light. According to her uniform insignia, her name was Trelza, one of the top-ranked tactical students. Major Bennett, she said, her translator giving her voice a musical quality. I have studied every major conflict in coalition history. None compares to what we just witnessed. Earth's history is different from yours, Alan replied. Will tomorrow's footage be similar? She asked. Tomorrow we'll see urban combat in Stalingrad. It was even more intense and personal than beach landings. Trelza nodded slowly. I will prepare myself. Many of my classmates are disturbed, but I believe this education is necessary. After the cadets left, Professor Kelnara entered the lecture hall. Her emerald scales seemed dull and her movements were stiff. 7 cadets have already filed formal complaints, she said. They claim the footage has caused them significant distress. We warned everyone what to expect, Samantha pointed out. Warning about horror and experiencing it are different things, the professor responded. Commandant Zexatral wants to see you immediately. In the commandant's office, the atmosphere was tense. Zexatral's face had again darkened to that deep, indigo color. One cadet has been sedated by medical staff, he said without greeting. A Phylaxian female. Her species is empathically sensitive. She experienced physical pain watching your historical document. I'm sorry to hear that, Alan said sincerely. But this is exactly why this training is necessary. If these cadets ever face actual conflict, they need to be prepared. Is this how humans prepare? By traumatizing their military recruits? Zextral asked. No, Samantha answered. We prepare them by showing them reality before they face it themselves. Despite the commandant's concerns, the screening schedule continued. The next day, only 89 cadets returned to the lecture hall. 2 weeks passed. Each day, more cadets failed to return to the lecture hall. By the 10th session, only 73 remained. Major Alan Bennett worried about the declining numbers, but he refused to change the curriculum. The cadets needed to understand what real war looked like. Today's footage showed close combat in Vietnam, jungle warfare, booby traps, and the confusion of fighting an enemy who blended with civilians. The room was quieter now during viewings. The cadets who remained had developed a grim determination to watch, to learn, to understand. When the lights came back on, Alan noticed Cadet Ixalaran sitting perfectly still. The young Drellin male had not moved during the entire hour of footage. His 4 eyes stared straight ahead. His normally red skin faded to a dull pink. Cadet Ixalaran, do you have a question? Alan asked. Slowly, Ixalaran stood. He was considered one of the most promising tactical students at the academy. His species was known for logical thinking and calm under pressure. Not a question, Major, Ixalaran said, his voice steady despite his pallor. A statement. I am withdrawing from the academy, effective immediately." A murmur ran through the room. Samantha stepped forward. "Cadet, perhaps you should take some time to consider." "I have considered," Ixlarin interrupted. "For 2 weeks I have watched humans kill other humans. I have seen what war truly is." He looked around at his fellow cadets. "I joined the academy to protect peace, to serve the coalition, but what I've seen here tells me I am not suited for military service. No honorable being could willingly participate in such actions." He removed his cadet insignia pin and placed it on the desk. "I thank you for showing me the truth, Major Bennett. You have helped me find my correct path." With that, he walked out. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then 5 more cadets stood, removed their insignia pins, and followed him. After class, Alan and Samantha met in their assigned quarters to discuss the situation. "We're losing them too fast," Samantha said, reviewing the attendance records. "At this rate, half the class will be gone by the end of the month." Alan poured himself a cup of coffee from their personal supply. "Maybe that's not a bad thing. Better they learn now that they aren't suited for military service than during an actual crisis." The commandant doesn't see it that way. He thinks, "We're destroying his academy." A chime at the door interrupted them. When it slid open, Trelza stood there, still in her cadet uniform. "May I speak with you?" the silver-skinned cadet asked. They invited her in. She declined the offered seat, preferring to stand. "Ixlarin was my study partner for 3 years," she said. "He was the best tactical mind in our class. Now he's gone, and others will follow him." "We're sorry to lose good cadets," Alan said, "but this is a necessary part of their education." Trelza tilted her head. "I agree. That's why I'm here. Many of us who remain want to understand more. Not just see the footage, but understand how humans cope with this reality." "What do you mean?" Samantha asked. "How do human soldiers continue functioning after experiencing such horror? How do they make rational decisions in those conditions? How do they live with the memories afterward?" Trelza's large eyes fixed on Alan. "We need to know not just what war is, but how to survive it mentally." Alan considered her request. "That wasn't part of our approved curriculum. The commandant might object." "Then don't tell him," Trelza said simply. "Those of us who remain have chosen to face this knowledge fully. Help us understand how humans endure." After Trelza left, Alan and Samantha debated what to do. Outside their window, they could see a group of former cadets gathering in one of the academy's gardens. Ixlarin appeared to be addressing them. "Something's happening," Samantha said. "It's not just cadets quitting. They're organizing." Alan nodded. "The question is, organizing for what?" Commandant Zextral paced his office, his blue skin flashing darker patches of emotion. Before him stood Major Alan Bennett and Lieutenant Samantha Wright, standing at attention despite the hostile atmosphere. 48 cadets, Zextral said, his voice low. 48 of our finest senior cadets have submitted formal resignation papers, almost half the class. "Sir, we understand your concern," Alan began. "Concern? This is not concern, Major. This is a crisis." The commandant stopped pacing and faced the humans directly. "The Coalition High Command has contacted me personally. Representatives are on their way to assess the situation." Samantha shifted slightly. "With respect, Commandant, perhaps this outcome isn't entirely negative." Zextral's skin flushed deep indigo. "Explain how decimating our graduating class is positive, Lieutenant." The cadets who left recognized their own limitations. They made informed decisions about their suitability for military service, she said. The ones who stayed are stronger for it. Professor Kelnara entered without knocking, her emerald scales dull with stress. "It's worse than we thought, Commandant. The resigned cadets have formed an organization. They're calling it the Coalition Peace Initiative. They've already filed for official recognition with the government." "An organization for what purpose?" Zextral asked. "They're advocating for alternative approaches to security, diplomacy, cultural understanding, conflict prevention." Kelnara glanced at the humans with obvious blame. And they're using the Earth war footage as evidence for why military solutions should be abandoned. Alan struggled to keep his expression neutral. This was an unexpected development, but not necessarily a bad one. Different perspectives on security could strengthen the coalition, not weaken it. A communications panel on the wall chimed. "Commandant, the High Command delegation has arrived," a voice announced. The meeting that followed was tense. 5 senior officials from different coalition species sat around the conference table. Admiral Carvon, a tall Drellin like Ixlarin but with age-spotted red skin, led the delegation. "This situation is unprecedented," the Admiral said after hearing all reports. "Never in the Academy's history have so many cadets resigned simultaneously. The humans' teaching methods are directly responsible," Professor Kelnara insisted. Admiral Carvon turned to Alan. "Major Bennett, did you intend to cause this disruption?" "No, Admiral. Our intent was educational only, to prepare cadets for the reality of conflict. Better they learn these hard truths in a classroom than in actual combat. But we don't engage in actual combat as humans understand it," another delegate pointed out. "Coalition peacekeeping operations are largely ceremonial, show of force, not use of force." "And what happens when you encounter a species that doesn't respect ceremony?" Samantha asked. "The galaxy is vast. Earth was isolated until recently. There could be others like us out there." The room fell silent at this uncomfortable thought. The Admiral finally spoke. "We will interview the cadets who remained and those who resigned. Then we will decide how to proceed." Over the next 2 days, both groups of cadets were questioned, at length. Those who had quit explained their reasoning with calm clarity. They hadn't left out of fear or weakness, they insisted, but because they had found greater purpose in preventing the horrors they had witnessed. The cadets who stayed, led by Trelza, were equally firm in their position. They described how the footage had changed them, made them understand the true weight of military responsibility. On the 3rd day, Alan and Samantha received unexpected visitors to their quarters, a group of 10 resigned cadets, including Ixlarin. "We wanted to thank you," the former cadet said, standing tall despite no longer wearing his uniform. "You showed us truth, and it freed us to find our real calling." "What will you do now?" Alan asked. "We're establishing a new diplomatic corps, focused specifically on species that might have warfare in their history like humans. We believe understanding violence is key to preventing it." Ixlarin smiled slightly. "We hoped you might be willing to advise us as well." After they left, Samantha looked at Alan with surprise. "That's not the outcome I expected." Alan nodded. "Me neither, but maybe it's exactly what the coalition needs." The unofficial meeting took place in a quiet study room away from the main academy buildings. Major Alan Bennett and Lieutenant Samantha Wright sat facing 15 cadets who had chosen to remain in the program. Trelza led the group, her silver skin catching the light as she spoke. "We've watched Earth's wars for 3 weeks now," she said. "We've seen the horror, the destruction, the loss. What we need to understand now is the human side of war." A Borellian cadet with thick armor plates nodded in agreement. "The footage shows what happens, but not how soldiers cope with it." Alan studied the group carefully. These cadets had proven their determination by staying despite the disturbing content. They deserved honest answers. "Human soldiers cope in different ways," Alan began. "Some focus on their duty, their mission. Others think about protecting their comrades or their families back home." "And after?" asked a small, furry cadet from a species Alan couldn't immediately identify. "How do humans live with these memories?" Samantha leaned forward. "Some don't cope well. We have terms like post-traumatic stress for the psychological damage war can cause. Others find ways to process what they've experienced and move forward. Yet humans keep fighting wars," Trelza observed. "If war is so terrible, why does your species continue to engage in it?" The question hung in the air. Alan took a moment before answering. "Usually because we believe something worse would happen if we didn't fight. Protection of homeland, stopping genocide, preventing greater suffering." He sighed. "Sometimes the reasons aren't as noble. Resources, power, misunderstanding. What we've noticed," said an aquatic cadet whose gills fluttered with emotion, is that humans keep functioning despite terrible conditions. We saw soldiers continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate any of our species. Human adaptability and endurance are remarkable, said another cadet. Is this why the Coalition wanted humans as members? Because you can endure conditions we cannot? Alan and Samantha exchanged glances. This was delicate political territory. I can't speak for Coalition leadership, Alan said carefully. But humanity has learned harsh lessons about survival and perseverance. Those lessons might be valuable to share. The conversation continued for hours. The cadets asked insightful questions about human psychology and combat, battlefield decision-making, and how Earth's military forces trained for the psychological aspects of war. When they finally finished, Trelza remained behind as the others filed out. The Academy never taught us about the mental aspects of conflict, she said. We learned tactics, strategy, logistics, but nothing about fear, courage, or moral choices under pressure. Those things are hard to teach in a classroom, Samantha replied. But essential to understand, Trelza countered. I believe this is why many of my classmates left. They realized they couldn't make those kinds of choices in real situations. Alan nodded. And you believe you can? I don't know, Trelza admitted, but I want to be prepared if such choices become necessary. Later that evening, Alan and Samantha were called to another meeting with Admiral Carvon. The elderly Drellin had completed his interviews with both groups of cadets. I've reached an unusual conclusion, the Admiral told them. This situation, though disruptive, may ultimately benefit the Coalition. How so, sir? Alan asked. For centuries, we've trained military officers using theory, simulation, and ceremony. We've been fortunate not to face truly violent species. The Admiral's spotted red skin seemed to grow paler as he spoke. But the galaxy is vast. We cannot assume our good fortune will continue forever. He stood and walked to a window overlooking the Academy grounds. The cadets who resigned have formed a valuable new diplomatic initiative. Those who remained are developing psychological resilience I've never before seen in Coalition forces. He turned back to face the humans. Both outcomes strengthen us. Then our program will continue? Samantha asked. With modifications, the Admiral replied. And with oversight from the High Command, rather than just Academy leadership. What you've started here will change how we prepare for the future, perhaps for the better. 1 month after the first screening, the Academy atmosphere had changed dramatically. With Admiral Carvon's support, Major Alan Bennett and Lieutenant Samantha Wright developed a new training program that combined tactical education with psychological preparation. Today was the final test. The remaining 52 cadets gathered in the simulation center, a massive room filled with advanced holographic technology. They had been divided into teams of 4, each with members from different species to utilize diverse abilities. This simulation is based on an actual Earth conflict, Alan explained as they prepared. The Battle of Fallujah, a complex urban operation involving civilian presence, unclear enemy identification, and high-stress conditions. Samantha added, Your objective is not just to complete the mission, but to make ethical decisions under pressure. There is no perfect solution, just like in real conflict. The cadets nodded seriously. They were no longer the same naive students who had first watched war footage a month ago. Their faces showed determination and a deeper understanding of what they were preparing for. Trelza led the first team into the simulation chamber. As the door closed behind them, Alan and Admiral Carvon watched from the observation room as the holographic environment formed around the cadets. Damaged buildings, smoke-filled streets, and the sounds of distant gunfire. Will they manage this? The Admiral asked. It's based on one of your most difficult urban conflicts. They've been preparing well, Alan replied, but the real test is how they handle the unexpected elements. Inside the simulation, Trelza's team moved carefully through the devastated city. They encountered a group of civilians hiding in a damaged building, then received intelligence about enemy fighters nearby. Minutes later, they faced their first moral dilemma. A suspected enemy combatant with a device that might be our weapon or might be something harmless. Hold position, Trelza ordered her team. Unlike in previous training simulations, she didn't immediately move to neutralize the potential threat. Instead, she attempted communication while maintaining a secure position. In the observation room, Samantha made notes. They're adapting human tactics but using their own species' strengths. See how the HFY team member is using their enhanced hearing to detect movement patterns? Throughout the day, each team completed the simulation. The results surprised even Alan. The cadets showed remarkable adaptability and decision-making skills. Their performance exceeded previous academy records. But what impressed the observers most was how the teams modified standard tactics to prioritize civilian protection and minimal force. When the final team finished, Admiral Carvon turned to Alan with an expression of amazement. They've developed an approach that's neither fully human nor traditionally coalition, he said. Something entirely new. Later, during the evaluation session, Trelza explained their thinking. We studied Earth's conflicts not just for their tactics, but for their mistakes, she said. We saw how civilians suffered when they became secondary considerations. We saw the psychological toll of certain decisions on the soldiers themselves. A Zerdon cadet stood tall on his 4 legs. We incorporated human resilience with our own values. The result is an approach that prepares us for violent conflict while not surrendering our cultural identities. Alan felt a rush of pride listening to them. These cadets hadn't become more human-like in their approach. They had created something new, a synthesis of human toughness and coalition ethics. That evening, Admiral Carvon met with the human advisors. Privately, the High Command is impressed, he said. They want to expand this program to all academy levels. And the cadets who resigned? Samantha asked. Their coalition peace initiative has received official funding. Several prominent political figures have joined as supporters. The Admiral's red skin showed patterns of satisfaction. They'll serve as diplomatic specialists, focusing particularly on potentially aggressive species. Alan looked out the window, at the academy grounds. So both groups found their purpose. Indeed, said the Admiral. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson humans have taught us. There are multiple paths to security. 6 months after the first screening of Earth's war footage, the Academy held its graduation ceremony. The Grand Hall was decorated with the flags of all 12 coalition species plus the newer Earth flag. The graduating class was half its original size, but each cadet stood tall with a new confidence that was obvious to all observers. Major Alan Bennett and Lieutenant Samantha Wright sat in places of honor near Commandant Zexitral, who had gradually come to accept the changes their arrival had brought. The Commandant's blue skin showed calm, even patterns as he addressed the assembled crowd. Today we celebrate not just the achievements of these cadets, but a transformation in how the coalition prepares its defenders, he said. These graduates have faced truths that no previous class encountered. They have emerged stronger, wiser, and better prepared for the challenges our uncertain galaxy may present. Each cadet received their officer insignia, with Trelza ranking first in the class. When she accepted her commission, she bowed deeply to the human advisors, but the ceremony held another surprise. Entering from the side doors came Ixlaren and 40 other former cadets, now wearing the new green uniforms of the Coalition Peace Initiative. They took seats opposite the military graduates. Admiral Carvon stepped to the podium next. Today, we recognize not 1 but 2 graduating classes, those who serve in our defense forces, and those who will work to ensure defense is rarely needed. The former cadets received their own commissions as peace officers. Ixlaren, like Trelza, had earned top honors. The 2 former study partners exchanged respectful nods across the hall. After the ceremony, a reception brought everyone together. Military graduates mingled with peace officers, sharing stories and plans for the future. The division that had seemed so dramatic months ago had transformed into 2 complementary paths. Your teaching methods caused quite the upheaval, Commandant Zexitral said, approaching the human advisors with a drink in hand. His tone was light, the earlier tension gone. But I must admit the results are impressive. Both groups have found their true calling, Samantha replied. That's never a bad outcome. Across the room, Trelza and Ixlaren stood deep in conversation with Admiral Carvon. The elderly Drellin was gesturing enthusiastically as he spoke. They'll both have significant roles in the new joint training programs, Alan observed. Military and peace officers training together, at least in the early stages. The academy will never be the same, the Commandant agreed. Next term begins with mandatory warfare reality courses, but also new classes in conflict prevention. A more balanced approach. A communications officer approached and handed Alan a message. He read it quickly, then showed it to Samantha. It seems we're needed back on Earth, he said. The Coalition is establishing an exchange in the other direction. Alien instructors will be teaching at Earth's military academies. Teaching what? The Commandant asked. Samantha smiled. Conflict prevention, cultural understanding, and diplomatic alternatives. Skills humans could use more practice with. As the reception continued, Alan found himself standing near a large viewport overlooking the academy grounds. A new group of cadets was arriving, their young faces full of excitement and uncertainty. They look so innocent, said Trelza, joining him at the window, just as we once did. They'll have a more complete education than you received initially, Alan replied. Yes. She turned to face him. Our class learned from Earth's wars. They will learn both the reality of conflict and the possibility of peace. Alan watched as the new cadets were greeted by both military instructors and peace advisors. 2 paths, 1 goal. Protection takes many forms, Trelza agreed. That is perhaps the most important lesson humans have taught us. As Alan and Samantha prepared to return to Earth, they received formal commendations from the Coalition High Command. The citation recognized their contribution, not as teaching the aliens how to fight, but as helping them understand when to fight, when not to fight, and how to preserve themselves either way. The exchange program had changed not just the alien cadets but humanity's place in the galactic community. Earth was no longer seen as merely a world with a violent history, but as a source of hard-won wisdom about the true nature of conflict and peace.